In the long-term, 12-month period, we're not going to survive. So what it actually means, the whole dairy industry is going to fall.
Sven Thompson has been farming with dairy cows in the Riviersonderend region of the Southern Cape for 15 years. A hands-on farmer in the traditional mould, rising before the sun to see his Jersey cows, Thompson says dairy farmers can no longer make a living because they're being paid a pittance for each litre of milk they produce.
It's a question of we can't pay our accounts, and eventually it actually reaches a stage that you choose between your cattle and yourself. Are you going to feed them or are you going to feed yourself? We're speaking of complete devastation.
Do you have a constant anxiety that you're not going to be able to make ends meet?
We just don't seem to have the finances. Going to the banks, the co-ops, they can't help us anymore. So where to from now?
The descendant of Scottish immigrants, Thompson has a deep connection to the area. His ancestors built the farmhouse 100 years back. It's even been featured in local magazines. While the history of this and other farms may be under threat, it's not a situation unique to the Western Cape. Carte Blanche has been inundated with letters from farmers throughout the country in recent years with similar complaints. The Beeld newspaper recently featured the story of a Witbank farmer who apparently throws out 3,000 litres of milk every 2 days because he can't sell it. While there may be more to that story than meets the eye, dairy farmers are nevertheless concerned that others are profiting from their hard work.
If you compare the consumer price of plus minus 10 Rand 50 a litre, I'm only getting 2 Rand 70. So where's the problem? I think it's quite simple, somewhere in between.
Although every farmer's costs are different, Sven says it costs him about 3 Rand to produce a litre of milk, yet he was only being paid 2 Rand 70 for that litre. In the Durbanville Hills outside Cape Town, Malt Loubser also owns a dairy farm. He knows about the effort involved in producing a litre of milk.
It's a 7-day, 365-day-a-year business. It never gives you a break because the dairy cow out there never stops producing milk.
Loubser is 6th generation on the farm, a successful farmer who's aware of what's happening in the industry. But he's also a processor, what we know as a dairy company, and displays the tough reality of the businessman.
I do believe there are farmers with whom it's going quite well at this moment, but I also understand that there's farmers with whom it is going not so well at this point in time. I think that is a reflection of what's happening in the total economic playfield out there.
Parmalat's Elton Dudley says it's economic conditions that drive what the company pays its farmers for their milk. He says we have a surplus at home, the global market is depressed, and there is simply no demand for fresh milk.
Since 2007, the raw milk price in South Africa has in fact escalated in excess of about 50 or 53%, whereas the milk price that we've recovered from the market in the form of our dairy pricing has in fact escalated by between 30 and 35%.
Which in business terms is a sizable gap and possibly one of the reasons for the reduced payments to farmers. Sven Thompson used to supply Parmalat with milk. He doesn't any longer because, like many other farmers in the region, he feels the company wasn't looking after his interests. Whether it's farmers in boots or suited dairy executives, you'd imagine that these disagreements could be resolved through dialogue.
About 18 months ago, I did speak to Parmalat about the problem, asking them, isn't it possible that they could put their production costs on the table and then doing the same from the farmer's point of view and then proving that somebody's making the money, but it's not the dairy farmer.
Have you been in discussion with some disgruntled dairy farmers?
We spent 12 meetings amongst all the farmers. We share the factors of the dairy industry with them in an open and honest manner, and I think they appreciate that. However, it's still not a popular decision.
So the two went their separate ways. Someone who has been making a profit is Malt Loubser. He can afford to spend much of his day looking at strategy and marketing new products, while others handle the farming side of the operation.
There's a phenomena in dairy farming that shows that the top third of dairy farmers and the bottom third of dairy farmers find a 300% difference in their profitability.
For Loubser, the key to running a successful dairy farm lies in keeping pace with the latest developments in the industry.
The world of milk production has totally changed. It's no longer about a young girl sitting in her smock on a stool milking Bessie the cow. It's now completely automated. Consider this, each cow has got a computer chip on her leg, and that computer chip can tell the farmer how much she weighs, what she's eaten. It can even tell him how many footsteps she's taken in a day.
If I think about the sophistication that is currently involved in a world-class facility in any aspect of this economy, it certainly allows you to do more with less.
The processors are saying that the dairy farmers need to be technologically savvy, and it's all about efficiency.
Technology-wise and the actual knowledge the dairy farmer walks around with compares with the best in the world, and it's my opinion that the average South African dairy farmer, if he wasn't up to scratch, he'd left the market long ago.
Is there a role to play for the small dairy farmer?
If you're too small, it's very difficult to achieve economies of scale.
Bertus de Jong is managing director of the Milk Producers Organisation, a body that is charged with looking after the farmers' interests. He says the small farmers who can't produce as efficiently as the big producers inevitably fall by the wayside.
Those farmers tend to sell out to the neighbour, who then becomes bigger and bigger.
We normally find that bigger are bigger because they are more effective and they take up less effective businesses.
De Jong says the implications of small farmers leaving the agricultural landscape are serious.
Lots of labourers are losing their jobs as a result of that. Your bigger farmer tends to be more technologically advanced, and as a result, he doesn't need that intensive amount of labour.
If the dairy farmer goes, all his labourers go with him. Even if you can take it as far back as the vet, the lawyer, the doctor on the little platteland towns, they go with him because eventually that's where the jobs come from.
To safeguard the future of themselves and their workers, you'd think farmers could simply negotiate a better price with another dairy company. But Parmalat is dominant in the Western Cape, one of a handful of large processors in the country. Alternatives for the small farmer are limited.
There are some 2,700 dairy farmers operative at the moment. They deliver mostly to about 5 of the larger processors, will process about 60% of the milk, and in turn they will deliver to 4 supermarket chains that distribute 80% of the milk.
With a number of dairy companies and supermarkets being investigated by the Competition Commission for price fixing, what are the options left to Sven Thompson and other dissatisfied farmers? Well, some have even suggested a return to the days of the milk board, when the farmer's price was inevitably guaranteed. De Jong isn't so sure that's the way to go.
We must also understand that we then put management in the hands of government. And I think recently that has not really been a popular route to follow.
Just how close are you to giving it all up?
We just can't carry on like this. Because the stress on you every day, we're not going to see the end of the year without many farmers having to stop.
The causes are varied, but either way, our dairy farmers are hurting, searching for a fair price for their work.